Yeah.
This is Geek Therapy Radio.
What are we waiting for?
And now your mental curator, Johnny Hamburger.
I am geeking out about the show this week. In just a few seconds, we're going to talk to Clint from Lazy Game Reviews on YouTube, or LGR as you may know him. Then after that interview, in segment 3 and 4, we're going to talk about what Neil Armstrong actually said from the surface of the moon. But first, let's talk to Clint from LGR. Clint, the reason I wanted to get you on the show this week, and I mean, I've wanted to get you on the show in past weeks also, but you are wily and busy, and which is great. But you came to Texas recently, Dallas more specifically, and you visited a dreamscape, as you described it in your video, just a dream come true. It's a warehouse full of old computer parts. Can you tell us a little bit about Computer Reset in Dallas? Because I want to get into that story.
Yeah, so sometime last year, I started receiving emails about this sort of legendary place. Everybody was just talking about it in hushed tones in the retro community, and saying that there's this massive place in Dallas that you could get into maybe sometimes, but if you ever were able to let the guy to get you inside, and there's just a 38,000 square foot warehouse of retro computers. It's been there since the 80s, and it's just chock full, pallets and pallets full of hundreds of computers and software, everything, AV equipment. I mean, it's just a technological paradise in a way.
Yeah. So 38,000 square feet. That is, I was guessing in my head because I didn't recall the number off the top of my head, but what you mentioned, if you mentioned it at all in the video, but 38,000 square feet, that's kind of hard. That is, would you say that's kind of like a huge Walmart?
It'd be like like a super Walmart grocery section. It's like that entire thing, all the way back, just as tall as well. I mean, it goes from floor to ceiling in some spots. And up front, I mean, this is not even including the front part of the store. This was a retail kind of thing as well. They had like a repair shop, and they sold and did software, and a lot of used computer stuff was their business for years. So there's a front section as well, and that's 2 stories alone, and that's full of stuff as well.
So what do you know that's going on with the owner? Why there's some kind of not controversy necessarily, but people really don't want to see this resource go. And to kind of put some brackets around this, what you found in that warehouse in the retro computing community, not just retro computers, but just retro gear. Period. You found some VTRs and VCRs and betas and video production equipment from the 70s and 80s and everything. It is a treasure trove. There is, I don't want to get too specific, but there is some money there as far as people wanting to repair or replace these vintage machines. And believe me, there are people that want to do that. I think the existence of this place in the plethora of devices that it has can potentially severely offset, the eBay resale community. And you were mentioning that the owner was sick, or it's kind of up in the air. The future of this place is up in the air. Can you shed any light on that for our Houston listeners?
Yeah, so at the moment, the owner is doing a little bit better, but earlier this year, he had an accident. I don't know if it was there or not, but there was some sort of thing that happened where he was injured and he had to be hospitalized for a good while. And he was already, he's getting up in years now, and he was already in deteriorating health, so not in great shape anyway. So the place has really just fallen into disrepair just for years now. But at the moment, It is kind of up in the air, because when I first got down there, the whole reason that I came anyway was because it was on a Wednesday afternoon, and they're like, some people that were involved were telling me that by the coming Saturday, the whole place was going to be bulldozed, sold for scrap. And so I was just like, oh no, this may be my only opportunity to get down there. So I just bolted over to Dallas and did everything we possibly could in terms of talking to the family and going through every avenue of trustworthiness that we could come up with to get inside and just talk to them, start a dialogue. Because at this point, the owner, he was kind of out of commission, and the family were under the impression that the whole place was literally just full of junk, trash, not of any value, and and the stuff was so old nobody would care, and so they were fine with just scrapping it, just getting the scrap value. And there was a scrapper involved apparently, or some sort of, somebody that wanted to just buy out the place for the scrap value, I guess. But they decided against that after a bunch of us in the community got to talking to them and letting them know that there's a lot of things of historical value there, and just that honestly would be worth a little bit of money. And,
Right.
if we were to sell it to the community instead, and then, so yeah, we've just been doing that. And at the moment, they are opening it every weekend. Not every weekend, but certain weekends. There's a group on Facebook to let everybody know what the plans are. And it's just kind of a week-to-week basis right now. But yeah, volunteers are working with the family and everybody involved to make sure these things get out into the community and they're not just scrapped.
Absolutely. That is wonderful. That was my main takeaway. And by the way, listeners, and anybody watching me on YouTube that for some reason doesn't know who LGR is, go check out his channel, Lazy Game Reviews. He just did a video, I think it's his most recent post as of recording right now on Tuesday, to see exactly what we're talking about. The biggest concern that popped up in my head and why I wanted to get awareness about this out there was that proposition that there's a threat that it could be potentially bulldozed or sent to the junkyard or something like that, because I guess the general public, obviously I don't blame them, would assume that in the modern age of smartphones and our modern laptops and 16 core Threadrippers and all that kind of stuff, that who cares about the old junk. So we'll take a break in the conversation right there. Yes, there's about a minute left in this segment, but honestly, as I'm cutting up this interview with Clint, this is the most logical place to do it. So it's kind of a good point there to think about. Yes, in this world where we have 16 core, 32 core Threadripper AMD processors right now, which, by the way, it's so cool that AMD is competing with Intel in earnest these days. That is amazing. But as we have all these new technologies, these smartphones that shoot 4K at 60 frames per second, my friggin' phone shoots high speed slow motion shots at like 960 frames per second. Technology has advanced and it is so amazing. So why would it be that a place like Computer Reset, that is a treasure trove, a time capsule for old technology, is so important to so many people? Most people would see an old computer and think it's just worthless. How much worth does it actually have? I would wager a lot, and we'll talk more about it when we get back with Clint after this break. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Geek Therapy Radio. I am talking to Clint from Lazy Game Reviews on YouTube about why Computer Reset in Dallas is so important to so many of us. Let's continue. That is a gold mine to a very plentiful and passionate retro computing community. And I wanted to start doing my part to get the word out that if you're interested in vintage gear like this, and I know a lot of people are, to at least put Computer Reset and the situation happening there on your radar. This is a massive, I can't stress enough, massive treasure trove of retro computing gear. And Clint, can you tell us a little bit about what you were most interested in the first place? Well, maybe not most interested. You had a computer that you were trying to repair, rebuild, get some parts for, a PC Junior. Can you tell us a little bit about that computer just to bring us up to speed in a geeky way?
Yeah, so one of the things that I ran across there specifically that was most interesting was a computer system that was used by Sierra Online, the game developer from the 80s and 90s. And this in particular turned out to be a programming / quality assurance type computer that was used by none other than Ken Williams, the lead of the company. I've just recently found out since the video, actually. I've been able to confirm it with him and some other people at Sierra. And when you boot it up, it says Ken Williams Super Junior at your service. And it's got a hard drive full of like QA files and like testing logs and bug reports for various late 80s Sierra games. So that's just one little thing that we found there that just caught my eye. And there's a ton of things just like that. I mean, the room that we found that in is floor to ceiling of just endless boxes of these things like that. We just happened to notice that one because it had the big Sierra logo on the box. But I mean, the other stuff that's in there, it goes back to the mid 70s in that room alone.
Oh yeah, the big main. Did you see any mainframes in there? Big, giant truck sized.
Oh, sure.
Oh yeah, and the reel-to-reels for all the data as well. Those themselves, if they're not completely destroyed by the ravages of time and climate, Dallas is very hot, and magnetic tape does not do well in the heat unless you can rebake it. Recording studios will quote unquote bake tapes to kind of adhere the substrate and everything like that. But that it's just the tip of the iceberg. Those reel-to-reels and those mainframes are the tip of the iceberg. And the thing is, what was truly one of the most amazing things was that not only was it parts and other, disassembled things in various states of disrepair, but brand new in-box old stock. What do you think was some of the coolest stuff you saw brand new, old stock, just in the box, unopened, completely just time capsuled? What were some of the coolest stuff you saw?
Well, relating to some of the mainframe stuff, we found a whole bunch of reels of mainframe tape that had never been used. They were still sealed, and they looked to be in good condition. We took a couple of those just back. There's one of the guys that was there. He actually deals with collecting mainframes and stuff, and he was looking at them, and they looked amazing. I mean, they smelled brand new. They'd been in there probably since the early 80s, it looked like. But yeah, and there were pallets and pallets full of brand new computers from IBM, and a bunch of things that had gone through separate looks like wholesale deals. So maybe if they weren't brand new, they were at least complete pallets full of different computers from Zenith, Compaq, IBM, Hewlett Packard, just things that were, they're full-size pallets. So some of them that on the bottom, they're probably kind of messed up by now, but the ones we were pulling out from the top and the middle still looked great. And a lot of people have taken some of these home and, opened them up, and they're still working fine. You may have to replace a battery here and there, but other than that, it's amazing. Just the pallets full of IBM stuff alone, the software. I mean, there was most of it seemed to be from the mid to late 80s. And from what I've been able to tell and having done some more research, it looks like that the owner of the place, Richard, was really involved in that business of just sort of buying out used and new old stock or things that didn't sell and just stuff like that from the late 80s, and kind of running a business like that. I found a bunch of ads from like PC Magazine back in the day and some newspaper prints and things of him just saying, look, I've got this tons of stock here at this place. If you're a company and you need these old parts, here you go. Or if you're a company that has a bunch of legacy hardware and you just want to get rid of it, then they were free to send it a computer reset. And he actually put in the ad, no questions asked. We will take your old hardware. So it's just... And he did. Yeah, he did. He took it all and no questions asked.
And there's still a lot of stuff sitting around even outside, which is just unfathomable. I would chalk up 90%, at least 90% of what you saw outside to scrap metal. There's no way the caps and media and anything like that is still even remotely viable in anything that's been sitting out in the Texas sun for the past 20, 30 years. I wouldn't mind if that gets, ecologically recycled or disposed of properly, but the stuff inside, there's still a whole lot inside that can be saved. So to the best of your knowledge, would you say that there is a growing swell in the community that is focused on, no matter what, saving what's there?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, even before the video, there was a whole ton of people that I was hearing from that were just sort of figuring out about the place through the grapevine. But as of now, I mean, there's been like something like 4,000 or 5,000 people added to the group that is the Trying to Save It group on Facebook. So there's thousands of people there, and I've received, I don't even know how many emails from private collectors, from museums, from people that just, resellers, everybody that wants to get involved. And so in one way or another, whether it ends up in the hands of collectors or museums or even just people hawking it on eBay, there's truckloads of stuff. I mean, just truckloads and van loads leaving every weekend that they happen to open back up. So
That's wonderful news. I mean, that actually makes my heart happy to know that this stuff is being saved. To go to one avenue or the other, like you said, selling on online retail or just going to people's collections, going to museums, as long as most of it is saved, maybe an old floppy disk from 1993 of America Online. I think we got plenty of those. floating around the ether of retro computing. As long as we save a few of those, it's fine, but I can't even begin to fathom how many of those disks are floating around. You could probably build a skyscraper, actually like a skyscraper to code by using those America Online disks. All right. Yeah. So the last thing I want to talk about, well, unless we get to something else, and I know your time we're going 50 minutes here. Have you heard about, I think it's the company's called Retro Games Limited. You know how they released the mini C64, basically like the mini SNES, mini NES Classic, but it was the C64 version. Have you heard about the new one coming out in December that's full size with a built-in keyboard?
I have indeed. Yeah, I've actually been in touch with a couple folks.
Ooh. So there could be a review or something like that coming up soon in the future, possibly?
Maybe, like, I talked to him as well, some PR person, about the mini one, and I kind of passed on that because it didn't really interest me too much. But the full-sized one very much does, because that I've never seen before. This is something that's a little... I mean, there's been a million C64 revivals over the years, but this one... even if it doesn't come with any software that I'm interested in, which it looks like it does, but even if it didn't, I would still be interested just because of that recreation of the whole body and the keyboard and, the potential for even modding it, creating my own project with it. That's super cool. I like that they're coming up with this full size thing, which is actually what they were trying to do in the beginning, like years ago, before they made the mini version. They tried to kickstart it or something. They didn't get the funding, but I guess now that the mini did well enough, they're doing the full thing, and that's great.
Yeah, so I wanted to kind of get your more in-depth take on that. There might be some detractors that say, well, you should only use the old hardware, and this is just junk, or whatever their thoughts on it might be. But my argument is that for those of us who own a C64, and by the way, quick side note, when I went to buy my C64 from an electrical engineer here in Houston, I went to pick it up in my 1983 DeLorean because I had to do it with the full effect. I wasn't wearing the stonewashed jeans or anything, but it kind of went with the whole, era of buying a Commodore 64. All right, we'll pause the conversation one more time right here and continue in the next segment with more on the new Commodore 64 coming out. So in the meantime, I'll leave you with this idea. Are you excited about the new Commodore 64? Do you remember using the original Commodore 64? Have you even thought about the Commodore 64 in the last 30 years? Has it ever entered your mind? Did you know there's a shop in Eastern Europe, auto mechanic, that still uses a Commodore 64 to balance axles? Yes, a Commodore 64 still being used in an actual business in the wild. It's crazy. Let's talk more about the new Commodore 64 coming back. Clint from Lazy Game Reviews on YouTube is my guest. Welcome back once again to Geek Therapy Radio. Clint from Lazy Game Reviews on YouTube. Go subscribe to his channel and Geek Therapy Radio's channel as well. Let's continue the conversation about the new Commodore 64. So those of us who still have a Commodore 64, who actively use the Commodore 64 for whatever reason, just nostalgia purposes, I'm excited for this new C64 because it will allow me to get 90% of my kicks with the C64 without having to put any more, extra wear on the original Commodore 64. Is that something, can you see that being a use case? Do you agree or disagree with that?
No, I agree. I mean, for the most part, I don't even use, I use a real C64, but I don't even use the disk drives or anything. I use an emulator because, I don't if I'm just wanting to play around with something, I'm going to emulate some part of the process, whether it be the floppy disks or converting it to a more modern video format. Just there's a bit of quality of life things that you can do to just make it more enjoyable when you just want a quick fix. Now, if I'm doing something for a video, I almost always go with 100% original hardware and CRTs and original discs, but my own time, I just like to screw around with something, and that looks like a fun little way to do that, especially since it does have a usable keyboard. You don't have to modify an external USB one or something. So I'm totally all for that because it makes it easy, and it also is just another way of doing something we've already had a way of messing with for 30 however many years. it's not like the old Commodore 64s are going anywhere immediately. Eventually they'll die. And that's another thing.
Yeah.
Is it's another form of, if not preservation, just keeping it relevant and making it simpler for some people to remember it or discover it for the first time. Like, it's got BASIC built into it. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, that's to me, the two coolest parts of this device are that it has BASIC. You can actually program in BASIC and get your jollies in BASIC and actually save your programs to the USB, which I assume is an emulated 1541 protocol or whatever. So you can get your kicks programming in BASIC, but it also comes with a VIC-20. I would wager that most people probably have more familiarity with the Commodore 64 than the VIC-20. Now, while there's still probably tons of people familiar with the VIC-20, don't get me wrong, I was or was not the C64 the more popular system in terms of sales and people just having it, period?
Oh, by far, yeah. It was, I think still is, the single most best-selling computer of all time in terms of a single, line of systems. So, yeah, obviously it was more popular. But yeah, including the VIC-20, and I'm assuming it could do other things too, like why not the Plus 4 or whatever else. There's other Commodore systems that'll fit in that form factor that if it doesn't come with it, I'm sure it'll be moddable because,
I didn't even think about that, and I'm sure you're 100% right. I wanted to talk about the keyboard, and this is kind of the last thing we'll talk about since I know we're 100% past the time I asked for. The keyboard. I think this thing is going to be so moddable that one of the side projects you can do with the new C64 is someone's going to write a code for it to hook up to a real computer. Your modern PC, your modern Mac or whatever, then you can run an emulator like Vice or what have you for the C64, but be able to use a real C64 keyboard layout. I know you can, in one way or the other, hook up an old C64 to a modern PC through various connections and code and stuff like that, but it seems to me that it's going to be a fun secondary use to run emulators on your PC, but use the actual C64 layout keyboard. On that note, will you be okay with the reproduction keyboard feeling better than the original C64 keyboard?
I would hope that it would feel better. Honestly, I'm not a big fan of the C64 keyboard. So, yeah, if it does have any kind of quality to it, then that's just a bonus. But I know some people will want it to be as authentic and mushy as possible, but that's not me. Like, I don't know. I've never been a fan. I like the way that the keycaps feel. So that's more important to me, is the way that those caps feel, because there's a specific type of plastic in the way that the letters are shot into there and stuff. Like, that's more important to me, is like the whole, like, if it feels cheap, then whatever. But the mechanisms, that's you can go either way with that. So I'm not expecting like mechanical keyboard quality or anything.
so exactly. So the last thing I'll say about that is that, it's outputting at 720p to an HD TV. It's got an HDMI output. If people start nitpicking that the keyboard doesn't feel like the mushy vintage keyboard, like, there's better micro switches in the joystick and there's an HDMI output, and you're gonna nitpick over the feel of the keyboard. It's already updated and upgraded in terms of convenience. So why not make the keyboard at least feel a little bit more modern, I guess? But those kind of reviews are coming where they say, well, I just wish the keyboard was more like original. But to each their own. The last thing I'll say, and this is kind of silly, Clint, I think this is a question right up your alley. Would you wear a cologne that was scented like old hardware?
If it had the right kind of old hardware scent, yes. Like, not like blown capacitor scent. I don't want that. But like, if it's, like the way a new old stock keyboard, oh man, like one of my favorite smells is just getting like an old IBM Model M that's never been opened or used, and then you first open it up, it's like a new car. So yeah, it's that classic plasticky, rubbery metal. Oh yeah, totally. I don't know if I'd wear it. I mean, I'm not much of a cologne person, but I'd smell it. Like, I'd buy it.
Why just not? Put like an air freshener in your house. And plus, the bonus added benefit is if you go on a date and your date's like, is that Model M you're wearing? She's the one. So, Clint, thank you. Unless there's anything else you want to add, of course, plug your channel, plug away anything you have coming up. Just go for it. Let listeners know what you got in the works right now.
Oh, yeah. So LGR is the channel on YouTube, so you can find it pretty easily, just 3 letters. I'm working on, right now, a review of a Sega digital camera. It's the only one they ever made.
Sega?
Yeah, Sega, yeah. They made a digital camera in 1996 to hook up to all sorts of weird stuff. So, yeah, I've always got things in the works, a bunch of computers, some, software, some games. But at the moment, it's my world is digital cameras, I guess, for this week.
And you just got an arcade machine, which I live vicariously. That one of the best days of my life is when I got my arcade machine. Oh, it was so awesome. So super proud of you on that. Clint, I know we can talk forever about all sorts of nerdy stuff, and hopefully in the future we will. But I guess that's it, man. Thank you so much for coming on Geek Therapy Radio.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Once again, my eternal gratitude to Clint for coming on the show this week. He is just an exceptionally well-natured, kind-hearted human being, and it meant the world to me that he give time to come on the old AM radio with yours truly. Of course, we also recorded a video that I will pop up on the YouTube channel. By the time this airs on Saturday night, 10 p.m., this will already, the video will already be up on YouTube. I will drop that on Friday. And as a reminder also, if you're just cruising around town listening to Geek Therapy Radio and you like what you're hearing, the podcast version of this broadcast also drops on Fridays, usually, so you can hear the entire show before it's actually aired. It is the same exact show that airs, it's just with way less commercials and super high-quality audio. I upload, by the way, to let some geeks behind the curtain, as I am prone to do here on Geek Therapy Radio. When I upload the podcasts, I'm uploading it at the highest quality bitrate that our uploader will accept, and our uploader is Spreaker. So as it sends it out to iHeartRadio and iTunes and Google Podcasts and whatever your podcast player is, I upload it at 320 kilobits per second MP3. That's the highest quality that I'm allowed to upload. So I want to make sure that by the time it gets to your podcast player and to your ears and to your speakers and to your headphones and your car stereo, whatever, that there's no compromises. There's as few compromises as possible to your audio quality of my show. I am an audio engineer in my background. I take an almost anal retentive approach to how I produce my show and how I mix my show and what codecs I use to compress the show. I am not sure what compression codec Spreaker uses once I upload it. And I don't know what streaming codec, each individual podcast player uses by the time you listen to it, but I upload the highest quality possible going in. So anyways, if you want more information on Computer Reset, go onto Facebook. There's a group of about 5,000 people so far, and it keeps growing. It's the Computer Reset Warehouse Liquidation page. Computer Reset Warehouse Liquidation page. Go join that page to learn all about Computer Reset and the fate of Computer Reset there in Dallas. And I think you'll be happy you did. It's a fascinating story. We need to preserve as much of these old computers as possible. More information on Clint from Lazy Game Reviews, just go onto YouTube right now if you're not driving and type in LGR and obliterate that subscribe button. He has one of the best channels on YouTube by far. The way he presents information is just so soothing and informative. I love Clint. I love that he came on Geek Therapy Radio. All right, stick around for my tribute to the 50th anniversary of the Apollo 11 moon landing. I think you're really going to enjoy it. I put a lot of time into it. I really enjoyed making it. Stick around. It's good. Since the first human being opened their eyes under the new weight of conscious uncertainty, they couldn't help but look to the stars in wonder. Wonder about his or her place among the brilliant points of light. Wonder about the very nature of the stars, and therefore wonder about the very nature of themselves. Though through the ages our default was to worship under the sheer influence of their majesty, slowly but surely our curiosity led us to conquer the ocean itself, to reach out and touch the corners of our own world. Looking up, we let heaven itself guide our course across the sea, along the way discovering that we were in fact not alone on the patch of dirt from which we disembarked on the journey. The stars would guide mankind to new lands, new worlds, and new life. Inevitably, as more time would pass and more new worlds would be discovered, we would continue our gaze upward, all the while asking questions of ourselves and developing new methods to test those questions. By looking upward, asking questions, and testing those questions, eventually we created the tools to look deeper into the heavens than previously conceivable, and eventually ask an inconceivable question. Could we go there? In 1962, at Rice University in Houston, Texas, President John F. Kennedy would call upon an army of multinational talent of every race and every background to ensure that which made us the most powerful nation on Earth would propel mankind to the moon itself.
But I do say that space can be explored and mastered without feeding the fires of war, without repeating the mistakes that man has made in extending his writ around this globe of ours. There is no strife, no prejudice, no national conflict in outer space as yet. Its hazards are hostile to us all. Its conquest deserves the best of all mankind, and its opportunity for peaceful cooperation may never come again. But why, some say, the moon? Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why 35 years ago, fly the Atlantic? Why does Rice play Texas? We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other thing, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win.
And with that challenge, and within 7 short years, 3 men sitting on the shoulders of giants, fueled by the desire to honor those who gave their own lives in this pursuit, would strap themselves to the most powerful machine ever created in human history and hurtled themselves violently out of Earth's grip at over 17,000 miles per hour to reach the terrifying serenity of nothingness. Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins would spend the next 3 days in close-quartered isolation. A unique predicament to feel cramped while floating through the almost complete nothingness of outer space. Each day, home growing smaller while the prize grew bigger. Apollo 11 would enter orbit around the moon about 75 hours after launch. While 3 days of isolation would be torment in itself, communications blackout during the portion of orbit which found the spacecraft on the opposite side of the moon must have been surreal. For about 3 minutes, the crew were temporarily the only living human beings to be completely cut off from their species and home altogether. No person, alive or dead, has been further away and more out of reach than those who have been in orbit around the moon. Armstrong, Aldrin, and Collins were seasoned professionals, however, enduring years of training and preparation. As the three approached the landing site in the Sea of Tranquility, the lunar module would detach from the command module, leaving Michael Collins behind to maintain lunar orbit while Armstrong and Aldrin made the final descent. Then, on July 20th, 1969, 2:17 Central Standard Time.
5%. 185. 875 feet. That's looking good. Down a half. 6 forward. 60 seconds. Lights on. 6. Down 2.5. Forward. Forward. That's 40 feet, down 2.5. Picking up some dust. 30 feet, 2.5 down. Straight shadow. 4 forward. 4 forward, drift into the right a little. Down a half. 30 seconds. Forward, drift. Okay. Contact light. Okay, engine stop. Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. Roger, Tranquility. We copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again. Thanks a lot.
And then came the words, perhaps the most famous sentence ever uttered in human history. That allowed the entire world to come together as one and forget, at least temporarily, our problems and be shown what we can do when we put away petty things and petty disagreements and come together to achieve something greater than ourselves.
I'm going to step off the limb now. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
I hope you've enjoyed this edition of Geek Therapy Radio, and especially this last segment, my tribute to the 50th anniversary of the Apollo 11 moon landing. And I just want to leave the audience, anybody listening to the broadcast as it airs on the anniversary of the moon landing, anybody listening to the podcast, I want to leave you with these thoughts. My hope for the 50th anniversary of the Apollo 11 moon landing is to inspire you. I hope that we can all look to what we have achieved 50 years ago and not question and not be angry that we haven't been back to the moon or that progress seems to be slow on that front. But to remind ourselves of what we can do as a human civilization when we come together in a country that allows for such a thing to happen. We put away your differences, skin color, race, religion. Let it be a reminder of what we can do when we all team together to do something greater than ourselves. Keep looking to the stars. Stay curious. Embrace your inner geek. And I'll see you next week.